Okay, welcome everybody to the Fire Environment Continuing Education Subcommittee monthly webinars. This month's presentation is from Faith Ann Heisch with the Fire Family Plus overview. And just a real quick, I'm going to do a quick intro of the Fire Environment Continuing Education Subcommittee. To get started, I am Wesley Hall. I am the chair of the committee, or subcommittee here rather. The FC-ESC is a small group of professional experts, and we seek out solutions and provide a platform to share information amongst larger user groups on topics such as fire behavior, fire recurrence, fire weather, smoke, and risk assessment tools. We are a subcommittee of the NWCG Fire Environment Committee, and our purpose is to pass that knowledge, stimulate innovation, share new skills, and bring people together with other professionals and researchers with their peers as well. We'll go over a quick webinar rules. For questions, please use the chat feature while the presenter is speaking. You can also raise your hand and unmute when called upon at the end of the session. Please stay mute during the presentation if possible. If not, we will probably mute you if you're making noise. Please keep your webcam off during the presentation as well to maximize the bandwidth. You can turn it on if you would like to, if you ask a question. And any questions that we don't get to that aren't answered during the presentation, we will follow up via email upon the webinar's conclusion. To present, our today's presenter is Faith Ann. Like I mentioned, she's a physical scientist with the USDA Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station at a Missoula Fire Sciences Lab in Missoula, Montana. Faith Ann is a member of the Fire Modeling Institute, and she supports training and software for fire danger, which is Fire Family Plus, and fire behavior, which is Behave Plus. Faith Ann has a PhD in soil science from Texas A&M University, a master's in atmospheric science from Oregon State University, and a bachelor's in physical geography, and German from the University of Alabama. And with that, Faith Ann, the floor is yours. If you want to share your presentation, we'll get started. Thank you.
So I am going to talk about Fire Family Plus. Just a caveat, a lot of this is in flux. It always seems to be. And as soon as I get a job aid done, somebody changes something, either minor or major. So I'm in the process of updating a few of the job aids, but I'm going to show you a lot of the steps in the process. So when I do get the job aids done by the end of the week and send them out, or have Wes send them out, you'll have seen it before at least. So the plan is to talk a little bit about general information about Fire Family, how to get data. There's 3 pieces of data you need: a station catalog, weather data, and fire data. I'm going to show you how to create a database using some of this data. And then we're going to run through using Fire Family Plus. And then finally, where do you get help? And notice nowhere on here is WIMS, because I don't do WIMS. I keep trying to convince people I don't do WIMS. I know the basics, but I don't know all the details about it. So the current version of Fire Danger is NFDRS version 4, used to be known as NFDRS 2016. And the latest version of Fire Family Plus came out on the 4th of November. Do not, if you're in the Forest Service, do not use the version in the Software Center. There's one person at the help desk who insists on putting the one from the Software Center on your computer. Don't let them. Just hang up and try again. Very nicely hang up and try again. The next version that's coming out will have a digital signature. It works, but a couple of agencies are seeing it as the signature is spam, so we're still working on that. Updates to the software are made regularly. This isn't software that's just going to sit here on the site and not change yearly. I'm hoping it doesn't change any more than 4 times a year. But Matt Jolly manages that part of things, and I don't know when he sees something to change and it's big enough, he'll update it. I am taking suggestions on how to get the word out. We do have a sign up page on the Fire Lab applications. I have never used it. And so I'm not sure how well it works, and I don't know who signed up for it, but I'll show you that in a little bit. I don't think we're going to have any major updates until we get to version 6. Version 6 is going to be, we're getting away from Access and going to a SQLite database, which will eliminate a lot of the issues that we're currently having with Fire Family Plus. We'll also get the improved statistics for fires analysis that I've been talking about for several years. We'll definitely improve the graphics, and then there's more that I don't know about right now. So any questions on Fire Family Plus? And I can't see the chat, so.
No questions yet, Faith Ann.
Okay.
In the chat, at least.
Okay. And feel free to speak up or break in at any time. This is definitely casual. So in terms of getting data, weather is now still fairly complicated. To get recent data, we go to the data warehouse. It's a Cognos database, and it has hourly data since the 14th of August, 2014. So almost 10 years of data. Very excited for 3 months from now when it is 10 years of data. The second place you can get recent data is the Western Region Climate Center. And a password is needed for data more than 30 days ago, and they generally only give you access to data in your region. And then you can go to WIMS. You use the PLST function, and it can be quirky at times, but it can be downloaded. If you have data, if you want a SIG of data and you just want like a couple months of data or the last few days or whatever, that's probably the quickest way to get it, because it comes down as an FW13 file for the entire SIG, and you can just upload it. If you want more historical data, CEFA is the best place to get it. It has data for all the years that your station or each station has hourly solar radiation data. Generally started in 1999. Most of the long-term stations had it by 2002. And generally any newer stations since 2005 have it for their entire lifespan. This data set has automated snow flags through 2017. This was based on the MODIS snow data that came out. And in some areas of the country, it works really well. And in other areas, it overestimates the snow. So it's something that you kind of have to examine for your local area. CEFA also provides gap-filled data if someone has purchased it for them. And I know that when FEMS comes out, that will have all of the gap-filled data will be available for the entire US. That's a different talk and not my talk. But I know that that's in progress right now. I know California, for example, has gap-filled data. So if you're in a state that has gap-filled data, probably want to use it. And otherwise, we have the non-gap-filled data. This is just the raw data. A note here that the CEFA data are completely independent, and the Western Region Climate Center are completely independent of WIMS. They don't talk to WIMS. They don't know WIMS. So any updates, changes, modifications you've made to data in WIMS will not show up in those. So that's just a caveat there. And again, the Western Region Climate Center, but it has, the nice thing about the Western Region Climate Center is it has hourly data for the life of the station, provided that it was either A, automatic, or B, they uploaded the data. If you have a long-term station and you want to add data from before the latest version of the satellite went up, you can actually talk to Tim Brown and he will help get that up there so that that will have the full record for the life of the station, provided I believe that it had hourly data. So that's fire data. It looks daunting. It can be daunting, and it changed the most recently, which is why any job aid you have about getting weather is no longer accurate. But we'll walk through that together. In terms of fire data, There's several sources for this. The FPA FOD, this is Karen Short's data base that she created. She prefers to call it the FPA FOD, so I've tried to train myself not to call it the Karen Short database. It has data from the latest version has data for 1992 to 2020. And this is being added to Inform. And once that happens, Inform will be the single authoritative source for fire data at that point. The nice thing about the FPA FOD is it has all of the data for the feds, the states, the counties, the cities, any data that Karen could get from anybody. And she has a huge source of folks that she contacts to get the data. She does a quality control on it to try to remove duplicate fires and things like that. It's a fairly rudimentary process, but she does have that in there to try to move at least the big fires. Inform is officially the database of record, and it has fires starting in 2021. Some agencies are in there from 2020. And again, like I said, the fires from the FPA FOD are being added. I don't know the timeline for that. And you do need to have a NIFC GIS password. And if you haven't seen Inform or used Inform before, I'll show you. You don't really have to have a lot of GIS skills to use Inform. And Fire Family Plus can import Inform data directly. Other sources of data are the Fish and Wildlife Service. I talked to someone from there, and they are probably going to switch to Inform next year, but they're not 100% sure. They have their own database, so you have to know someone who knows someone in the Fish and Wildlife Service. They're happy to give you the data. They just pull it from their system. Oops. And then the states, I know that California, Montana, and Oregon all maintain their own databases where you can get data from. So if you're not using the FPA FOD, or you need data that for some reason isn't Inform, I believe all three of these states are using Inform, then you can go to those states directly. And I do have older instructions for how to download those that we're currently testing. The last thing that I didn't put in here is station catalogs, and generally those are most easily obtained from the data warehouse. And the reason for that is that they are created in such a way that they can be imported directly into Fire Family Plus. I worked for over 6 months to try to get them to use the process that we had, so that still works. You do have station catalogs in Fire Family Plus, but those were last updated in 2004, I think. So to say they're dated at the very least is would be an understatement. So make sure that whatever you do, you download the latest station catalog from the data warehouse, or you go into WIMS, compare the station catalog there, and type it into Fire Family. Do something to get the latest data, especially since we've gone on to version 4. Why is it so difficult? Everybody does it differently. Everybody has their own way of doing things. There's all these different proprietary systems out there. So that's generally why. I got a question on when will the data archive location stabilize? That would be nice. I don't know. I think when the easy button for fires is when the FPA FOD gets into Inform. And that will allow us to get all of the data from 1992 to present in one fell swoop. So that will be nice. The best I can say is soon-ish. We'll soon have 10 years of data in WIMS, and for most applications, that's what you need. For other applications, you will continue to have to go to other sources as well until FEMS comes out. When FEMS is released, it will have the historic data in there. Wes can tell you more about that than I can for sure. Fires eventually will come through Inform directly. Any questions on the summary? of data.
Faith Ann, nothing on the summary of data in the chart, but there is a question about the current version. Some folks dropped the version 5 November 4th build into the chat, but other folks have noted that their agencies loaded the January 27th, 2023 build. So is the version on the FireLab
If
the
they
right one
have
to
the,
grab?
I should say that one or newer. The one in January of 2023 doesn't have any updates to the November 4th. It's the same. Basically, it's a similar version. So you're not going to see any changes to your outputs from either one. But the one, I don't even, the last time I looked, it was the November 4th, 2022. But January could be the current one. I'm waiting for us to upload the one with the digital signature. But we have to solve the worms that are in it right now. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, the November 4th is what's on the website, so that works.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of times if someone asks me for it, I send them whatever version I'm currently using, which is probably the January one. Any other questions on any of this? I'll show you guys the locations and we'll talk through getting some of the data in a minute. I just wanted to get through the PowerPoint first and then switch over to all the other stuff. So for using Fire Family Plus, we're going to do a number of things. We're going to get some data, then we're going to import it. We're going to look at some stats graphs and some fire summary charts, and we're going to look at the term function in particular, along with the event locator. We can look at a fires analysis, whatever you guys actually want to do in there. I picked some of the big ones, and then there's a couple more that are problematic that if I have time, I want to cover. So the next one is a term file. There's three potential ways to estimate them. You can use WFDS, you can use the RMA dashboard, and you can use Fire Family Plus. All three of them are different. All three of them are designed to do slightly different things. The RMA dashboard and Fire Family should give similar answers if the assumptions are the same in the background. Fire Family Plus has the most flexibility because you determine what your season ending date criteria are, and then if you need something season slowing, you can do that as well. If you're looking for something like the monsoon will end to slow down for a fire season, you can do that as well. Whereas the others are only looking for the last day. So in FS Pro, it's based on outputs from your FS Pro runs. So it changes with every set of runs that you do. When you run 1,000 runs, it's going to look at the outputs it did from that, and that's what creates the graph. It uses ERCG, and it does not end when ERCG is 46. In the example that I have here, going to the season ending graph, in this graph right here, it is basically looking at the bottom bin. And in the bottom bin of FS Pro, anything below that is considered not fire spread. So they use that date in order to see what the ERC is in there. And that's what they determine to be their season ending date. So it's not based on anything else other than what that bottom bin is. I saw a question from Gina.
Hey, Faith Ann, a quick question. Are we using G in this, or are we using Y now?
They're still using G.
Oh,
And
okay.
Last I talked to them, they're going to stay with G.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
for that question, WFDS Classic will remain using ERCG until it becomes deprecated and we make the transition to the next gen WFDS. Next gen WFDS will be solely version 4, and so we will have the new fuel models in the new version of WFDS.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. I love it when other people know more than I do about things and they're on the phone, can answer. The RMA dashboard, I really like the RMA dashboard. It takes 21 years of gridded weather data from 2000 to 2020. It looks at the ERCY for every pixel, and it considers the season end to be less than the 75th percentile for each pixel on the lens in your selection. And that is what is identified as the season end. You will provide a fire perimeter, so it looks within the entire fire perimeter or whatever you upload as a shapefile. And you identify the days of analysis that you're interested in. So when do you want it to start analyzing season end, and when do you want it to end? It'll figure out what that 75th percentile is for the year. It has the 75th percentile. It looks to see when it's less than that in the data, and we'll calculate then the probability of a season ending event. It's really good because it uses ERCY, and it's looking at your fire perimeter and not the closest RAWs, which may be nowhere near your fire perimeter. And then you have the ability to set the days of analysis that you want to include, including the start date for analysis and the end date. The start date being more important because it is sensitive to what day you start the analysis on. But if ERCY doesn't explain the season ending in your area, you want to use your local knowledge. And then you get to set the criteria and time period for season ending events. Some examples of these are like rainfall, increase in relative humidity, green up, snowfall, things like that. Things that ERC may not catch, especially if you need something like 3 days worth of rainfall equal to an inch or more or something like that, that may not be caught by the RMA dashboard. I would look at the RMA dashboard first, though, because it is it has the advantages of using the gridded data, and it's for the perimeter of the fire itself. And then if you're looking for the criteria and the time period to look at these events, you generally use the event locator to help you get started for that. A term analysis in Fire Family Plus, it can be season slowing or season ending. I recommend using at least 10 years of data, but you don't need to use more than 20 usually. Select your analysis period carefully, especially that start date. The analysis in RMA dashboard and Fire Family Plus is sensitive to the date that you start looking at the data. You can enter data from the event locator, and there's a bug with that, and I'll explain what that is, or you can enter directly the data. The important thing if you're using Fire Family is to document why you chose the dates in the term file, so that if you come back next year, you remember what you did. Or if you're getting this file from if you're giving this file to someone else, they can see how you selected the dates. You can change the critical percentiles in here, but that's pretty unusual. It has set ones of 25, 50, 75, and 90%, I believe. So you can change those if you need to. When you import from the event locator, the caveat for the event locator is that you must look at the outputs because the event locator only enters the first time the conditions are met, even if that's nowhere near the end of the season. So if you set your working set to pretty early on and start looking, and it catches a rainfall in June, for example, that meets that criteria, that's the date it'll select. It'll list all of them, but it'll select that date as being the season end date, even if it's not. So you want to look at the outputs and make sure that that makes sense. You don't just take the event locator and go, yep, we're good. And in term, I said there was a bug. I'll show it to you. You turn on the critical percentiles, but only if you're importing from the event locator. I'm not sure what's going on there. I need to submit that bug. And then if you enter it directly, again, use the information you have from the event locator or local knowledge or anything, and then enter a date for every year in the list. Sometimes you won't have a year that criteria are met for whatever reason, and then I usually enter the date of the last fire, because if they don't have any fires that start after that, we're probably pretty close to the season end. And that is what I had for presentation. Are there any questions on that one?
Don, there was a question in the chat from Chuck McHugh. What is the cell size of the gridded weather used in the RMA dashboard season ending graph? Do you happen to know that?
I don't. It's the one that's used for all of the gridded weather, and I actually don't know. I'll have to ask and find out. So I'm sorry, I don't know that answer.
Yeah, Wes thought it is 2.5 kilometers, which sounds right.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. And that would probably be my best guess for that as well. So any other questions so far? Okay, so one reason I presented it first and then went through this was to stimulate your minds so that when we do go through something, maybe it'll stimulate more questions. So the first thing we need to do is get some data. And the FAM IT has changed the website. It's now wildfire.gov. And there's all kinds of information on this site. And when I first saw it, I got a little overwhelmed because I wasn't sure where to go. However, if you look in the application search, you can see the FAM Web Data Warehouse or Fire and Weather Data Extract. Both of those are easy to use. I use the data warehouse because I get it. It's a little clearer to me which one is which. The fire and weather data, if you remember the static data that are updated every year, that's what those are. Those are the data that you can get once a year. They come out usually in February or March, sometime in there, and you can download just the whole year of data for all of the stations in an area. So what I end up doing usually is just going to the data warehouse. And then there's a number of different ways to get here. You can visit the data warehouse. I know that I want the public access reports. And again, this will be outlined in the job aid that comes out later this week. It's what I was updating yesterday. So in the data warehouse, going to the public access reports. And then it should start looking familiar eventually when it comes up, sort of. So in here, we have the fire data extract. That is for Forest Service fires that used to be in the old, before the data warehouse, we used to be able to get. They're not in there after 2020, I believe, maybe 2019. The weather data extract is the one that we want to use. You can also get historical 209s through here if that's of interest as well. So I'll click on weather data extract. And we have three things. We have historical, a station catalog data extract, and utilities. I'm going to look at the station catalog data extract. And the one that I'm interested in, and the only one that will import into Fire Family, is station catalog by station. And again, if this is probably overwhelming, but I will have an updated job aid. They moved everything around after I published it. It seems to be a common theme. I finish a job aid and they change something on me. Let me find my station. Okay, so I'm going to use 422.803 as my station. And then I'm going to finish here. It's going to download. Notice that it ends in CSV. It is not a CSV file. It is a text file. I tried to get them to force a change in the actual, what it should be on the end, but they haven't. So I usually go in and just put in what it is. So I put in the station ID, the name, and then I end with a TXT. Some browsers need the quotes, Chrome doesn't, but I will use that. And then let me go here. And if you don't remember that a text file will be your station catalog, I can put it, you can put it in there as well. Okay, and then save that, and that one's ready to go. At that point, I need to go backwards to the weather data extract, and I'm looking at historical. It says historical, but it's updated hourly to the latest hour. So I should be able to get data through at least 0800 Mountain Time. And the only option there is the FW13. We do have the FW21 format, and you can get that from some locations here. They just have the FW13 format. Click on that, put in your station ID. I know that I have data through 2017 in CIFA. So I'm just going to go from 2018, January 1st, and I'll go through today. Make sure you click the hourly button. You have to have hourly data for it to work. This is going to take a minute to do. You can go all the way back to August 14th of 2014, which is a day that I will remember forever because it was the first day that we could get hourly data without it deleting after 18 months or 36 months. And then finish, and then it'll work on it for a while. You can have it emailed to you, and it works quite well if you have it emailed. Hopefully this one won't take too long, and we'll be able to get something out of it. While that's running, questions on the data warehouse at all?
They're not necessarily on the data warehouse, but there was a couple in the chat. What's the benefit of the new FW21 format?
The FW21 format will only contain the inputs needed for running version 4 of the fire data, or from the Fire Family Plus, the Fire Danger. So if you look at the outputs from FW13, there's a lot of outputs in there that you don't need, like the maximum and minimum temperature in RH, 24-hour precip, and state of the weather, and a few other things. And we don't need those anymore. And the wet flag is the other big one. We don't need those in NFDRS version 4. So he's just cleaning it up, making it shorter. It's also going to be comma delimited, which will be easier to use outside of Fire Family Plus as well. And you can already import it into Fire Family Plus. The other nice thing about it is if you get it from FEMS, it has, because FEMS has gap filled data. If you select the gap filled data, there are flags towards the end of that explain the gap filling that they did, if any, and what they changed and how they did it. I don't know all the details of that. And that will, it won't import those, but you'll have that record if you need it for later. And so it will import what it needs from that.
Okay.
So
another question about the job aids. Will those be sent out via email or posted somewhere?
I always post them on the Fire Lab website, but I can also send them out to everybody who's on the call as well.
Okay.
Actually, I'll probably ask Ben and Wes to send them out to everybody who's on the call. But definitely once I get those done, I have the other thing I'm working on is an FAQ list for Fire Family Plus, which are questions that I commonly get that are not necessarily related to common things that we do, like importing data or creating a stats graph or importing custom data, whatever's going on there. So instead of that, what I have are just lists of where do I get this data and what do I do this and why does this do this? What happens if Fire Family crashes multiple times? That kind of thing. So if you see that, I'll send that out with the job aids. And if you see anything you think I should add to that, please let me know. This is the first time I've put one of those out, so I would like to get feedback on that. I did get some feedback from the latest S495 course students. It's quite a lot. It's a fairly long list. I think by the time it's done, it'll be like 6 pages, but hopefully it will be useful. I've identified different areas within it that it can use. Since this is still running, see if I can find it. We'll also go to firelab.org. Oops. This is the website that it's on. If you go to apps and products, you can click on, scroll down, and Behave Plus is in there, and also Fire Family Plus. If you click on the Fire Family Plus site, here's where you can sign up for news. I don't know that any of us have used that recently. Unfortunately, we need to get back into the habit of doing that. Here's where you download Fire Family Plus. And then the job aids are down here at the bottom. So at the bottom, we have an archive for the major builds that we have for each version, in case people need to go back and look at that. So we do have that as well. But if you click on the job aids, it's just a zip file. I think right now there's 17 of them. There's some more I'm going to add. These are the ones we use in 491. I'm actually going to add some to that list as well for more general use. The ones that I have numbered right now are numbered by the way we teach them in the course. And in the future, I just add on to the end, and I'll probably put a table of contents in to let you guys know which one you need to look at. Here's the FAQ that I have right now. So I have questions like, my database crashed, and every time I open it, Fire Family Plus closes immediately. What do I do now? Why is my database blank? Can I recover it? And the question is maybe. And how do I save a backup of my database? Because the very first question I'll ask if you call me to help recover your database is, did you save a backup? Or when did you last save a backup? The next one is related to inputs. The only one I have right now is, how do I set the snow flags? In some calculations, why do we use a batch file? What's the difference between batch and interactive batch? What does use daily extremes do in Fire Family? It's new in the November version, I believe. And how is it calculated? A couple of things about the working set window and what happened to some things. We'll talk about that. One of the big ones I get now with the latest version is, why are my lines squished at the bottom of the graph? All of my outputs, I've got my outputs, the ERC ranges from 0 to 40 and the graph goes from 0 to 500. Why is that? It's usually because there's an error in the database outside of your working set. And then how do I export my outputs? So those are the ones I have right now. And I can certainly add more later. So I've started working on those as well. I'm about halfway done. And I keep adding more as I find them. Let's see, it's still running. We'll let that keep running. I'm going to go to CIFA. The CIFA site, it's much simpler to use, actually. They did do some rudimentary data errors, fixing them. And they may have, you may see an error at the bottom that says, hey, we noticed there's some problems with this station. You'll want to look at the data pretty carefully when you import it, if that case. We have two of them here, the NWS 16 ROS list and the gap filled list. If you click on the gap filled list, it will actually open. Come on. Yes, here it goes. The list of all the stations that are currently gap filled. And I know all of California has gap filled data. There's another couple of states who have paid for that independently as well. But this is the list of those stations. And so all of these are gap filled. But until FEMS comes out, or when FEMS comes out, all of that will be done for all stations in the US. In this case, it was individual states created a contract and did that for that. So that's in there as well. I don't think Utah did gap filled data. The other way you can do it is you can just always look and see if your station's in there. So it doesn't have them. So I put it here. The nice thing about CIFA and the reason it was created was it gets all of the data from the time solar radiation started at the station to the end of 2017. At one time, it's all formatted, it's pre-calculated so that it's very quick to get the data. You don't have to wait forever like you do with the data warehouse sometimes. One thing I like to do is it comes down with just the station ID. Because I have a really bad memory these days, I like to put in the station name, and then I also put in that it came from CIFA before I save it. And that will be, and that just lets me know when I'm looking in this to import the data, I know exactly where everything came from. That was much faster than this one. Okay, we'll just let that continue to download and I'll move on to fire data. The fire data, the FPA FOD, this one was published in 2022. And it has data from 1992 to 2020. If you end up Googling it, this one is not the version that always comes up. Every previous version will have a title that says, this is not the most current version. Go back or click on this link to go to the correct one. When it comes down, you can get it in several different places. You can get it as an Access database, as a geodatabase that's usable with ArcPro or ArcMap, a GPKG database, and then a SQLite database. Depending on what you're doing with the data, you may want different ones, because I'm usually identifying my data by location. I generally pick the geodatabase to use, and it's a pretty big file, but it works. If you're looking more particularly at some things, the Access database will work as well, but you do have to understand how to export data from an Access database to get it into Fire Family Plus. You have to do the same thing with the geodatabase. It just depends on what you're looking for there. And I will show you what that looks like. The last one here is Inform, and Inform, go back to the main site. This is what Inform looks like when you open it. You do have to have a NIFC password to get there, a NIFC org account. So you have to do that, and then you have to sign in. Once you're signed in, then you can launch Inform. One of my little buttons disappeared, so I can't draw a perimeter on here, but I can upload a perimeter to select from. I'm not sure why that's not working on my computer today. But what you do is you see the whole US. It has some defaults selected: the fire discovery date, the incident category, and the incident status. To change, I always select all those that are certified and complete. I don't select anything that's incomplete because it usually doesn't have the data I need for Fire Family Plus. Or quarantined and non-quarantined, I don't look at those. So I only look at the certified and complete. If you want to go by a specific GAC, you can look at a given GAC. You can also look by state. The incident category, you can pull prescribed fires out of here. You can't import them directly into Fire Family Plus, but there is a workaround for that. So which I'll show you. We're working on that as well. It's a little more challenging to get that one in because the data we might want, there's a little different. You can look at the fire cause, and you can also look at by discovery date. So, whoops, that's not going to work. So if I just want to look at all the data for, oops, 23, it'll update automatically, and it'll start pulling all the data in, I believe. Yep. And then as you zoom in, you'll see more and more data show up. So if I were going to go to Southern Colorado and look, the further in you go, you'll see the data for the different types and sizes. And if you click on one, you can see information about the incident name, its ID, and its discovery date and final size. So those are the ones that you have. Aha! My weather data finally came through. All right, so the way I'm going to do this is the same as the other one. It's the station name, station ID, station name, and then I'm going to put DW for to let it know it's the data warehouse, and I end it in FW13. A lot of people don't change the ending, and that's fine as long as you remember what the data are. But sometimes if you open them in Fire Family, it will corrupt them I'm sorry, in Excel and then try to import them into Fire Family, they do get corrupted. So to save myself from doing that, because I do it all the time, I go ahead and I change the name. It is not a CSV file. It is actually formatted as an FW13 file. And it's confusing, and I apologize. I could not get that fixed. So I'll save that to my data set. And then in here, once you find the data that you want, you can go in and download the data from there. There is, if you scroll, just look at the top, there's a user guide on how to use it and how to get the data out of Inform. I've done it several different ways. I have uploaded a shapefile. I have just zoomed in on the area I want, and I have selected it by state. I actually, the other day, downloaded all 50 states worth of data from here for a project I'm working on. And those are actually the fire data we're going to work on next. Let me see. Any questions on data sources? I apologize for the confusion. I really wish I had a magic wand that I could fix it for everybody. Okay. What I'm working on here is this is the FPA FOD data, the original data. There are 2.3 million records from 1992 to 2020. It says 2021. It really ends in 2020. Because I didn't get that right. I then, what I am only interested in is data since 2000. So I stripped it down, and you'll notice there's a lot of different categories in here. It has to be cleaned up in several ways at this point to use it. So what I did was I deleted the unnecessary categories. And the last thing I need to do is, which I'm working on now, is select it by attributes. So you do have to kind of know GIS a little bit or know someone who does. Railroads is one. So I'm selecting the attributes. If you can't remember what the attributes are in Fire Family, I'll show you how to get it. This is the series of attributes that you can get. A lot of the categories are going to fall into the miscellaneous category because the new data have more refined options of what is going where. So that's that one. Once I have them selected, now I can't remember. Railroads are 6. You can then calculate the field. And if you only look at the selection and calculate the field, it'll calculate it for you. When I get done with this, I will delete the general cause class and create a database that are custom fire data that I can bring into Fire Family Plus. But I still have quite a bit of work to do on that one. Any questions on that? We do have information on how to work with this data and also how to import the Inform data. So those are also job aids. Again, things change. So I'm going back and looking at those.
Faith Ann, there's a question. Will new versions of Fire Family Plus have more cause classes that match up with Inform?
Yeah, once we go to version 6, they will match with Inform. We can't change it in the current version, and I think it's because of the structure of access and the way things are set up. So what we do with Inform actually is we have an interpreter that will bring the data in from Inform directly. So that's an excellent question, and we will, as far as I know, have that in the new version. Okay, in Fire Family, To create a new database, you go to File and then New. Save it somewhere. The name. And then we're ready to import the data. Remember, we do always need to import a station catalog as well. To do that, we go to Data and then Import. Click on the WIM station catalog and select the catalog. This is the one I just downloaded earlier today. And we can open that. I always view the log to see if there's any weird things in there. For some reason, the latitude a lot of times will get off. It's a space delimited file, which is very problematic. And a lot of times something happens and there's an extra space in there, or there's not enough spaces and the latitude will get messed up. I'm not exactly sure why that happens. And so it's not something that we can avoid. But when we go to a comma delimited file structure, that will go away. So I do want to make sure that that's the case, that I have the data in here. The next thing I want to do is I want to bring in the FW13 file, because that's what I imported. I'm going to bring in CIFA first. And the reason I'm doing that is CIFA has the snowflag data. And if you're sure that your people have been keeping up with the snowflag with time, and there's not a right or wrong answer to that. There's a preferred answer, which is yes, but there's not a right or wrong because it didn't used to matter. Because you used to freeze the stations. Now we don't freeze them, we have a snow flag. So because that has the snow flag, I will usually import CIFA first. And I will overwrite any existing data. That's out of habit. I know there are no data in the database. I'm just habitually doing that. I found if I don't do things the same way all the time, I will get confused. Let me see what else is going on. That's got a lot of data in there, so it's going to take it a bit to go into the database. It's first going to read them, and then it's going to update it in the database. That's why it runs through the data twice. Okay. If you view the log, it looks for days for which there were more than 2 inches of rain by default. If you're in the eastern US or the southern US, that's not very helpful, because you'll find a lot of dates in here. I usually just glance through to see if there's anything that says they found an hourly precipitation amount that was like 50 or something like that. So I just look for something really big. And then at the bottom, make sure that all the data were included. And then the last one, I'll bring in the data warehouse. And then generally, because I don't usually, as someone who doesn't work on these stations all the time, I usually say no on the overwrite for the data warehouse because I do not know about the snowflags. Is Travis on the line? I think I saw him earlier. I was going to ask what FEMS was going to do for snowflags because I can't remember. But I think they have a solution to provide those for all the stations that don't have them. The best practice is to, because you only have to turn it on and then turn it off in WIM. So the best practice is to do that. Have someone in your office do that. Or I know a couple of dispatchers who actually have a spreadsheet. So on the days that they're out, someone can go in and just write if there was snow or not, and then they don't have to edit the database themselves. I'll view the log here as well and just make sure there's nothing in there. This is, see, now we have several hours in a row that was 6 inches. And so it's outside of fire season. I'm not going to worry about it, but it does make me wonder why all of a sudden there were 6 inches of rainfall in an hour. And once we go down and then from left to right, we've done our station catalog, we've done our weather. The last thing to do is our agency fires. This is a DOI fires are the ones that I have for this database. So you select them. I'll explain what those are in a minute. That brings up the fire import. And I'm going to bring in the Cedar City data. I tend to select only agency lands because other lands may or may not be nearby. At least several years ago, if they went to somewhere else in the country and worked on it, they would worked on a fire, they would put that in here too. I don't know if that's still the case, but just to be sure, I only select the agency land to import that. And then import that. It will import directly the .raw files from the Forest Service, those old ones, the WIFME data. It will bring in NASF if you don't use the FPA FOD and you want the state data, you have to download it through the NASF or the individual state sites, and we can import directly what those data are using the NASF CSV option. The last one is a new one since the 4th of November. And that's why I encourage using that one or newer. And that's the Inform CSV. You select the GAC option. Oh, I saw 79 errors. So I'm going to go in, and there's a lot of them that have an invalid statistical cause. That's pretty common. If I thought they were important, usually I would go in and check them out and fix them. They also skipped almost 2,000 fires due to my fire type filter, things that were not an agency land and things that were prescribed fire. I didn't want those in there. So I added about 4,500 fires and I rejected about 80 of them for having an invalid statistical cause. Normally, like I said, I'd go in and fix those, but I'm not going to do that today. If I were to have Inform data for this site, I would click on GAC and then click on Inform CSV. It will import the Inform CSV directly. I don't have one for this site. I have one for another site, and I can show you what that'll look like in just a moment. The one thing to be cautious of is if there's a very long comment. Early on in Inform, they allowed unlimited characters in the comment field, and that fire will be rejected because the comment is so long. The easiest way to fix that is just to shorten the comment before you bring them in. It will tell you what line it is, so you know you can go into it and look. Since it's a CSV, you can also do it in Excel and fix that. Now that I have that, I have my station. The years of data that I have are in here from 2002 to 2023. I will set my fire association. I know it was BLM. Utah, and it was Cedar City, and click OK. I can also view my selections, will tell me all the selections across these entire list that I want to see, and that's really helpful if I don't know what I've got selected on a given site. And then I can also view the fires if I want to see what they look like as well. But we can do that another way. I'm going to click OK, so I have that in there. Things to think about when you have a database. The first one is this Force NFDRS for recompute. If you happen to add data in the middle of your data set, or edit data in the middle of your data set, or update data in the middle of your data set, you want to force an NFDRS4 recompute. You add data earlier than your data set is. Anything that's going to affect your dead fuel moistures, because what this does is it pre-calculates the dead fuel moisture, and you need to update that if you bring in new data. And so checking this box allows you to, forces it to update that. I'm not going to do it now because we don't need to. And generally you don't need to. This is just sometimes. Use daily extremes, looks for the period of extreme data like mid-afternoon, late afternoon in a lot of places where you can get like the highest, what would be the highest ERC of the day or the highest BI of the day. That would be what you would look for there if you were interested in doing that, as opposed to the time at 1300. Let me see. So for now, I can, the one thing you do have to do before anything gets started, because I brought in the latest station catalog, it's already updated to 2016. And you'll notice that there's very few things that are actually needed in the station catalog as well as in the data. So I, by default, go in and I calculate an ERC stats graph just to get things going. It pre-calculates those dead fuel moistures, and I do it for the entire data set. You'll also find in here that there is no box that says enable auxiliary year overlays. That is now assumed automatically. It will calculate all of the years in the data set, not just the years of your working set, so that you don't have to say, oh, I forgot to check the box, let me go do this again. It will do that. And then you can just overlay any year inside your entire data set for that site. The issue that I get is sometimes data outside of your working window will have a really erroneous value, like an ERC of 500 or something. And so then you'll see, because Fire Family is old and temperamental, but it only knows, it looks at the entire data set to see the range of values on the y-axis. And so it takes the lowest and the highest ERC value, and it puts those as the y-axis. It doesn't realize that the ones you're looking at are only down here because the graph itself doesn't update along the way. Once I have that calculated, I can actually close this, and I'm going to go into I use the shortcut buttons a lot. All of them can also be found generally in either weather or fires. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do weather, view observations, and then all. The thing that I'm looking for, and the reason we have the NFDRS recompute, is if I go all the way to the end, you'll see the 1, 10, 100, and 1,000 hour dead fuel moistures and the fuel temperature value. These are the things that Force NFDRS recompute will update in your database. And if you don't update them, it won't know that you have new data inside, always inside of the database itself, because it tries to pre-calculate some of the missing data. So it may or may not see that you added data inside the database. So as a precaution, I force it to run that. If you add some onto the end, you don't have to do that. It'll recognize that's the case. Or just every time you add data, you click the button. Just don't forget to turn it off, because it can take a bit to update, especially if you're running a SIG. I have found if you're running a SIG for the first time, and there's several stations, like 5 or 6 stations in it, and you've got a long time period, it will crash Fire Family to try to do all of those calculations. Best practice is to compact your data. We did have an issue in 491 recently where compacting the data crashed the system, and I believe that we found that bug and fixed it, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to risk it anyway for this one. The databases are limited to 1 gigabyte in size because access limits us to 2 gigabytes of data total in a database, and Fire Family Plus needs about 1 gigabyte to calculate. And so if you take up more than 1 gigabyte of data for you, it doesn't overwrite your data, but it starts reading your data as if it were the answer. And so you'll get some really interesting answers out if that happens. So that is importing data. Questions on any of that? And I didn't get data for Utah, so I apologize for that. Actually, I can go in and bring that in. Let me just do that. If I go in and bring in the inform data, again, I'll select GAC. And I'm going to go to the desktop and the inform fire data. I'm going to look for Utah. This is the entire state, so this is going to be pretty big. And it's going to import. It will interpret automatically to tell me what it did. It automatically creates a fire region and a unit ID. And it brought in 2,700 fires over the last time period. So that's how easy that is. It takes it from the current inform data categories and converts it automatically over. So then I want to add the association under GAC. It's the Great Basin, and then you have the units. I don't know the units. I think it's CC for Cedar City. We'll find out. I'm going to click OK. If the data look weird and you're from this part of Utah, I apologize. To get a fires analysis, you can go to Fire Summary and General or Working Set. If you go to General, it allows you to select all the years in your database, even outside of your working set. So if I was going to see what are the data looking like for the entire time, oh, I have to specify them. Sorry. Now you know how I know how the common answers to mistakes is because I've made them all myself. So in the GAC, I've got the Great Basin and I've got Cedar City, and then in BLM, Utah and Cedar City. Okay, this is where viewing your selections can help because it shows me that I've got both the BLM Cedar City field office and the GAC data. There could be overlaps between them. I don't think there are, but there could be. And then the years, you can change it or you can look at the whole database and click OK, and it's going to come up with all of the data that it has and gives you a fire summary. That's handy if you want to see everything, including data outside of the window. This goes back to 1980, but our weather data only go back to 2002. So this way I can see what was in the database early on. If you haven't looked at the FPA FOD paper publication, I suggest you do. One of the things was the states didn't report fire data prior to about 1990 or in there. So this low number of fires back here may be only because state data were not included in the FOD, in the FPA FOD. In this case, it's from Cedar City. It's whatever the BLM reported. But if you brought in the FPA FOD data, you might see something where data back here are a lot less. And that's because state data were not reported during that time. Let me see what else I want to show you on here. So here we've got the number of years. The fires are in the red solid lines. The acres are the blue hatched lines. So for example, 2007 had a large number of acres, and 2007 and 2006 had a large number of fires without a large number of acres. You can also get a summary of all of this a different way. I'll show you in a minute. Here are the size classes. Down here, A through G, your 9 cause classes that we have, and numbers of fire per fire day. So 1,000 of their fires, they get 1 fire. 1,000 of their days, they get 1 fire. And on 46 days, they get 10 or more fires starting. If I want to see the class definitions, because I can't remember the cause class, I go into options and then view class definitions. And this is all in one of the tech tips as well that's already written. And you can see the size classes and the cause classes and what those are. If I go into view graph data, this is where I can really see what's happening with my fires. I get the number of fires in acres per year, the number of fires that were caused by lightning and human, how the size classes went out, the cause classes, so the number 1 being lightning, the number of fires per day. The one that I use the most is the fire size percentile distribution. because looking at the size classes, the second one is up to 10 acres. And it gets really hard to figure out what exactly, and then one of them goes from 10 to 100, right? So there's a lot of space in between 10 acres and 100 acres. And I want to find out more specifically where that threshold might be. So I look in here. The 85th percentile is 5 acres. The 90th percentile is 29 acres. That's a pretty big jump there. Something happens at that point in the data to cause it to jump from 5 acres to 29. So I'm looking for things like that that would not show up in this graph over here. Any questions on any of that?
There's nothing in the chat, Faith Ann.
Okay. If everybody's still awake, I'm going to go into the webinar database. Let's see if this is the one I wanted. Yes, this is the one I wanted. And so the last thing I'll do is cover term. I don't have an example from WFDS. I will show you the RMA dashboard for season ending. I haven't actually used it before myself, but I know a number of people who have. To see it, click outside to close what's new. We want to look at the season ending analysis. And you'll upload a polygon for the fire perimeter. It can't exceed 100,000 acres, and it must have a geographic coordinate system to work. And then you're going to use sliders to create a day of year range. And here's some suggestions on what days you might pick. So in the Great Basin, which is what we've been working on, they suggest 170 to 300. Once you do that, you will click on the term plot, and it will plot the graph. And then you can save it. And then just as a reminder, it looks something like this. This is what one looks like. And it gives you the probability of a seasoning event. This line here is the 25th percentile, which would be happen on the 28th of July. The 75th percentile is on the September 11th. And the 90th percentile is October 10th in this example, which was not from Utah. I can't show you this because I don't have a perimeter to use with it, and it's not something I've done before. But I am working with someone to get information on how to create one, although I think these instructions are like really clear on how to do it. In FS, if you want to do the season analysis in WFDS, it's at the FS Pro tab. In Fire Family, the first thing I want to do is I want to do an event locator. Which is up here at the top. And let's say I want to add precipitation amount. Oops. I said amount. Over 3 days. The sum has to be greater than or equal to, let's say, 0.75. And if this is wrong, Gina, I'm sorry. The value type, it's either a value or a percentile. In this case, I'm using inches, so it's a value. And then I can click OK. And it's going to go through the working set of my data over here, in this case, 2008 to 2017. And it's going to show me the days that met that criteria. There were 3 of them, and they were all in 2017. So obviously, these criteria are too high. Let me go back and try this again. And put it at 0.25. Also, I have my working set for my fire season here. That looks better. And notice that in 2008, it gives us 3 dates. 2 of them were in May and 1 was in October. So it depends on what date I'm looking for as to which date I want to use out of here. And generally you're looking for season end, so you'd use the last one in the database. You can actually take this option and click add to term, and it will add to a new term file. And from the event locator, and notice that it found 3 years for us, and the date that happened. If you look carefully over here, you'll see that this was the first date was added from 5/6. It's really 10/3 was the last date. And then over here, I would change this to for the second one, it's 5/22, and the last one for that year was actually 7/23. That's probably also not the right date. And then for 7/9 in 2017, and that should be 9/22. You can save this and run it. What you do need to do is make sure your start date is close to the end of the season. So if this was filled out, I'm just going to save it for now and I'll come back. There's a number of ways that you can find your data. In this case, I'm going to use an ERC to fill in the rest of the days just because it's a little bit quicker. I'm going to do a stats graph. I have about 10 minutes left. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can go. Yeah.
I don't want to go long because I know people have other things to do with their day. This shouldn't take very long to demonstrate. And I may just do a few years to show how it works.
While that's running, Faith Ann, there were a couple questions in the chat.
Mhm.
Oh, although it ran, I can hold off on them for a minute while you finish this
No,
part.
go ahead. We'll take a
Okay.
break.
The first one I think got resolved in the chat, but didn't NWCG recently change fire size classes, adding more beyond G? And also thought there was a change to statistical causes. It does look like there was some update to fire size classes, though not widely known or shared. But do you know about the statistical causes, the changes to those that occurred a few years ago?
The statistical causes were changed, and Inform uses the new ones. So if I go into my fire data here, the FPA FOD uses the new classes. So we have natural is usually lightning, power generation, debris, and open burning. Some of them are very similar. Recreation and ceremony, that's the old campfire one. Equipment and vehicle use. Scroll down and see what else I can find. Now I'm having trouble. Arson and incendiarism. That would be, of course, the arson class, railroad operations and maintenance. And then there's a lot of them like the electrical, smoking is still there. Misuse of fire by a minor, that would be children. Missing is miscellaneous or 9. And then any of these that don't exist in the current fire family, we put in as miscellaneous. So there's one about up at the top, I believe there was one on power generation. That one is not in Fire Family Plus, so we just put that in 9. Generally, the most that I personally am looking at is either human or natural. So it's less important in the current way that we use Fire Family, but if you're looking at how fires are spread in terms of prevention and other things, then you definitely want these, and the new Fire Family will have the new classes in it. This is the first I've heard of the changes in acres size classes beyond G. It doesn't surprise me that we have them. But I will make a note to make sure and check that so that the next version of Fire Family has the updated class size classes. That's another one that we can't do in Fire Family, so it's going to stick all of those in the G class.
Okay, thank you. The next one is there an easy way to edit fires? Say you've accidentally added in fires twice and each one is showing duplicates, or is it just easier to delete it all and start over?
If you added duplicates and you know they're from two different data sets, it's pretty simple. Let me open the one that the database I was working on before. This was the one. Okay. If I know I have, say, a fire associate, I'll usually even go under fires general so I don't mess things up. Fires summary general, and I view my selections. So I've got everything in here. This is the wrong one. Let me change this out. See if this is the one I want. Yeah, so say I have the GAC and the BLM, and I'm concerned that the BLM is related to the GAC. I can go into the BLM. I can set my working set to what I'm looking for and click on View Fires. You can do this with weather data too if you want to delete it. And let's say I wanted to delete all of my fires from, let's just say, what's the bottom? From 2021, because I know there's a duplicate. I would come up and say, okay, 2021 is 2630 to the end. So I would highlight the bottom number and click delete records. Now I have to remember what it was, which I don't.
2630 is what you said.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you tell where my mind is not? I'm very bad. I'm always writing things down. And then if I hit this and click OK, it will delete all of my records. You can't get this back once you do it. And I will click OK, and it will delete those records. So if I scroll down, those records are now gone. So if I know there's a specific time period of overlay and I know what the duplicate is, then I'm liable to, I will do it this way. If not, I will probably go in and delete all of my data, and so that there's no overlap between them. And anytime I make a change like that, I will compact my database to get rid of all the empty files. It also deletes all the temporary files Fire Family's used and reduces your file size, which helps you out. And so now I need to go back in and do the fire, the ERC, which should go quicker this time. Okay, it's not checked.
And then last thing was just a reminder from Casey Teskey in the chat, when you were showing the RMA dashboard, that size of the fire is limited to about 100,000 acres. So if you have a fire bigger than that, you'll need to break it down into chunks.
Yeah, or pick the part of the fire that's still actively growing. Hopefully not the entire fire line is growing. So you can cut out the area, the part of the perimeter where you have active fire, and use that as your analysis and not the part that's either contained or out from like 2 months ago. So that's another tip I've used to try to get a more accurate count of what might be going on, because once you get to those larger fires, there's probably several RAWs in the area. And so you want to make sure you're getting the best data closest to the area you're working on. Real quick, to add an overlay, you just add a year. I don't know why we default to pink. I hate pink, but we do. I change the width to something more than that and click OK. Now I have 2002 on here. What I want to do now is I want to add the fires. So to do that, I go to Graph Options, Fires, put my large fire days, large and multiple fire days. I'm just going to leave these as the default for now. and I'm looking at all fires. I could split out by lightning or human, but I'm going to use them all. Click apply and then close. And now for 2002, we had 48 fires. 8 of them were large fire days, large fires greater than 10 acres. And 11 of those days had more than 5 or more fire days in them. And so you've got the graph here. And then you can start looking at when you say you reach the 90th percentile in your given year and don't recover, or when your date of last fire was, that kind of thing to do that. Once you have that done, you run the term file and the interpretation is similar. Since we're running out of time, let me see if I can find the job aid for it that'll show you the end. This is the job aid on using the event locator and how to use it. And then term files. This is the one that explains how to do the term file in here. At the end, you'll have something that looks like this. And then at the very end, you'll see this type of screen. It shows both the information that you input, your critical probability, your key probabilities, and the graph to your term event, so then you can interpret it. If you bring this in from the event locator, these key probabilities do not show up. In order to bring that in, you would need to go to oh, it didn't save it in this one. You would need to go into the term file and add where it says add key probabilities. Let me find that. I think it's in the PDF. Wrong one. Term files. Right up here where it says key probabilities, if you click that button in term, then the key probabilities will show up in your outputs. And that's only if you use the event locator to bring it in. And with that, it's 11:30. I think I covered everything. If there's questions, let me know. If there's things I didn't cover, let me know. I'll be working on the job aids to finish those up and get them out to you as soon as I can, which will hopefully be by the end of the week.
All right, thank you, Faith Ann. Is there any questions for Faith Ann?
All right. Well, with that, again, thank you. Let me know if you have any questions. I am usually the one the help desk sends the questions to, so feel free to contact me directly. And if I don't get back to you within a couple of days and you don't have an out of office message, please contact me again. It meant that I got overwhelmed by my email. And I do apologize for that. I never thought I would have to say that.
All right, looks like there's no questions. Thank you, Faith Ann, again. I appreciate
Okay.
everybody for joining today. We will post the webinar to the Fire Environment Continuing Education Subcommittee website. There is a delay, sometimes quite a few months, but we'll get it in there as soon as possible. And there was a request to share the PowerPoint, so I'll get that out to the attendee list later this afternoon. Thank you, everybody.